Pickle, it's the off season, and there's I think we've pretty much stopped with the coaching carousel in college football. Barring something unforeseen, of course, we've seen that happen. We've seen that happen in the state of Texas in this decade. But barring something unforeseen, it is pretty clear that we will have the 12 FBS coaches in the state of Texas going into 2021, I should say. I believe there was only, do I have this right? There's only one change. Steve Sarkisian.
Yeah, because there's a bunch of them on their second year.
Yeah.
Dave Aranda, Jeff Traylor.
Yeah, a lot of them are in their second year. But there's only one new coach, Steve Sarkisian at Texas. Obviously, it's pretty notable. But I would say that, everybody likes to talk about, I don't know how comfortable I ever feel about people talking about people losing their jobs. It doesn't feel like fun. But it's something that I think is worth taking into the tapestry of what.
I think it's worth talking about. I don't think it's worth celebrating.
I think that's a good way to put it.
I don't like when people celebrate.
It's something worth acknowledging, but I don't think it's like, oh, they got to get this guy out of here.
They are humans too.
I think it's worth
some level.
But I do think it's worth recognizing that there are circumstances that are going to make some coaches' 2021 season a lot more important than others. For example, and I'm going to spoil part of it here, but if Jeff Traylor were to go 0-12 at UTSA next year, I don't think Jeff Traylor's going to 0-12 at UTSA. But if he were to go 0-12 at UTSA, still probably okay.
Yeah, I don't think
he's going anywhere. Okay, but there are other guys that if they were to have a poor season,
they could get fired in the middle of the season.
They could lose their job. So we're going to take a look at the 12 FBS coaches in the state of Texas, give a little bit of the coaching hot seat rankings. And Pickle made a graphic.
I did.
Good job, Pickle.
We had to cut it into two.
So we're going to start. We're going to go from the safest to the most in danger. And so we've got, I think, broke down into 5 different categories. We're going to start with the ice cold, very cold seat. I think there are 4 coaches who are 100% safe for 2020 or to coach the same team in 2022. Of course, that is barring them, scandal. That's barring them taking another job, et cetera, et cetera.
This is just on the field results.
This is on the field results. I think Jimbo Fisher at A&M is pretty darn safe.
Yep.
Part of it is that he signed that guaranteed contract. Part of it is that A&M's cooking. Part of it is all these things. I think Jimbo Fisher could go 0-12, and I think that there would be people who would cock an eyebrow in College Station.
College Station might set on
what's
fire.
What's going on? But I don't think Jimbo Fisher is going anywhere. Steve Sarkisian, I would also put it cold. I just don't think that it would take a really, really unforeseen circumstance for them to cut bait with a coach that they just paid $5+ million after 1 year.
Yep.
That just doesn't happen. Sonny Dykes, I think, is 100% safe at SMU. What he's done there, I think, is very impressive. Even though we had him on the show and he was like, it could have been better. I think most SMU fans and I think the SMU kind of brain trust is pretty darn pleased with having Sonny Dykes there.
Especially with the recruits he's bringing in, too.
Yes. The same goes for Jeff Traylor at UTSA. I think he's 100% safe. I think part of it is that he's in his second year, and the first year was so good, and the recruiting's picking up. Everything's pointing in the right direction for Jeff Traylor. I just don't see something going cataclysmically wrong that would cause them to be like, we have to get rid of Jeff Traylor. So I think that Jeff Traylor is pretty darn safe. So then we go to cool, and I'm going to be honest. Both of these guys, I think, are also a lot closer to cold than they are to, like, room temperature, which is the next one. But I got 2 there. Dave Aranda at Baylor. He's entering his second year. I think it's fair to say that his first year was not good.
No.
But I just don't see them, like, look, this cool means that if they go 0-12, then maybe. That's kind of where I'm at with it. If Baylor goes 0-12, Baylor might look around and be like, oh, is Dave Aranda the right guy? I would be pretty shocked by it, but there's that. The other side of that is Gary Patterson, who, of course, is the second longest tenured college football coach in America, only behind Kirk Ferentz at Iowa. Gary Patterson ain't going anywhere.
No.
I think the 2020 season for them was middling, if a little bit disappointing. But I don't think he's going anywhere. If they were to go 0-12, maybe there would be some people who say, oh, has Coach Patterson lost his edge? Is it time to move on? I don't see it happening. I think you could really lump all 6 of these guys into like almost certainly not. But I would say that Aranda and Patterson are maybe a half step above the other 4 who I think are 100% safe. I think these guys are like 99% safe.
Yeah, I don't think Gary's going anywhere until Gary decides that Gary's going somewhere.
I think that's the case too, but figured I would differentiate.
Right.
Okay. So then we go, so that's half the coaches. Here's the other half. Let's go with room temperature. Room temperature, I think Mike Bloomgren, our buddy, Mike Bloomgren, I think he's in an okay spot. I really do. I think that they're building something there at Rice. I think that they're pointing in the right direction. I think that that things are going well. Now, if things were to reverse course and they were to really take a huge step back this year, there are circumstances in which it's not totally outside the realm of possibility that he would lose his job. Because this is the 3rd year for him, right? Generally speaking, if you're within your 3rd year, in your 3
years is always the
I would say,
ladder.
And so as a result, I just don't think that. I think Mike Bloomgren is almost certainly safe, but there are some circumstances in which like you could say, oh well, he's been there for 3 years. We haven't seen the progression that we want. We have it would give the powers that be the permission structure to fire him. I don't think that's going to happen.
He needs the hooting to intensify.
Correct. He needs much more hooting. Jake Spavital at Texas State is in a similar situation. I think that they are going to be. I think that the Texas State Brain Trust is on board with what Spav is doing, but the results have not been there. Let's be honest. The results have not been there. He's now entering that all-important 3rd season there at Texas State, and I think that it would probably behoove him to show some progress. I don't think they're going to get rid of him. I think that they believe in what he's doing there, but I do think that Jake Spavital is a guy that keep an eye on him in that room temperature situation.
And it seems like this is a bit, with a lot of his seniors coming back and taking that COVID grant year, this is one of those where you got to take advantage of that. You can't be given a present like that and not use it.
Totally agree. So then we get to the warm seat. And I think there's 2 guys who I put on the warm seat. One of them's Matt Wells at Texas Tech. I almost put him on the hot seat, but I also don't think that's necessarily the case. He's entering year 3. I think it's fair to say that they have not had the results on the field that they were wanting to so far. If they have another bad year, if they have a year worse than this past year, I think there's a real argument. I think there's a real chance that they fire Matt Wells. That would be 3 years. They haven't made progress. The recruiting has been okay, but not spectacular. That would be something that I would say Matt Wells is on the warm seat. Dana Holgerstein, I think, is the same way. Dana Holgerstein's in it. We talked at length about that. He's had 2 super weird years at Houston. 2 super weird years. 2019, he goes out there. De'Aaron King redshirts in the middle of the season. They decide to leave him, blah, blah, blah. They kind of do this weird thing where I don't want to say they tank, but like things fall apart for them. And so then they go into 2020. 2020, I probably don't have to tell you, things are super weird.
Right.
They have a ton of games canceled, a ton of things going on, but on the field results were not good. They were, Sean J. Raja has a piece up on TexasFootball.com about this. They were irrelevant in 2020. I think that he needs to show some progress. The reason I look at Dana Holgerstein and say maybe there's a little bit of danger there, they're paying him a good amount of money.
Oh, yeah.
And Houston has made it very well known where their expectations are, and I think it's also fair to say that he has not met those expectations through the first 2 years. If they have a bad year, if they take a step back, I could see Houston cutting bait with Dana Holgerstein.
And I think it's another one of those things. If you have a 3rd year where the head coach just doesn't really have like a structure to the program, it's like, okay, there's a major disconnect here that's a lot worse than just not being prepared on the field. Like, he's got to build some kind of identity for those athletes.
I agree. So then we got 2 guys that I think are on the hot seat. One of them is kind of amazing to think about, but Seth Luttrell.
Yeah.
Think back 3 years ago. Think back where we were heading into the 2019 season. So really, 2 years ago.
Yep.
They were coming off of their 2nd consecutive 9-win season. Things were very clearly looking great. I think it's also fair to say the last 2 years have been not good.
Yep.
And I think a 3rd consecutive disappointing season could be the end of Seth Luttrell's tenure in Denton.
Yep.
I think we're getting to that point where he's got to show some progress and prove that this is a program that is a lot more like 2017 and 2018 than they were like 2019 and 2020.
Oh yeah, he was the hot young coach on
the
rise.
I thought he was going to leave.
He got an offer from Kansas State and turned it down because he wasn't able to bring his staff with him, and now you feel bad for things like that because you look back and think, man, did I miss my shot there?
Maybe.
You know?
But, I mean, we also know how talented he is, and he can bounce that back in a big way. And then there's one more, and it's Dana Dimmel at UTEP.
And this is so hard.
So Dana, I think we've talked at length on this program about this, that UTEP is a uniquely tough situation to win in. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why there were a number of people who were like, after 3 years, they're going to get rid of Dimmel. Mm-hmm. From what I understand, they wanted to make sure they gave him 4 years. Well, This is year 4. Right now, in 3 seasons, he has won 5 games. Now, look, they were better this past year. Mm-hmm. Went 3-5. Yeah. That's it's crazy to say it's a step in the right direction, but when the 2 years before that were 1-11, you take progress where you can get it. I think 2021's got to be a good year for UTEP. I think it's got to be, at best or at worst, no worse than last year.
Yeah.
And they've got to show that the trains are on the tracks here, or else I do think that it may come time for Dana Dimmel to go. I mean, they gave Sean Kugler, they fired him in the middle of 2017. They gave him 5 seasons. Mm-hmm. UTEP does tend to, but they only gave Gary Nord 4 seasons, right? UTEP does, their history has shown that they do want to stick with guys through a full recruiting cycle, which would be 4 years. Well, this is the big year. I think this is the really, really, really important year for UTEP, and I think Dana Dimmel's got to show something, in order to keep his job. So that's where I'm at. Your mileage may vary. That's what I think is the hot seat rankings heading into 2021. We will see what happens there. But anyway, there's that.